Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, ceasefire in Syria. The U.S. and Russia, among other countries, have agreed to cessation of hostilities in Syria within the next week, although Russia has made no promises regarding its own airstrikes. Will the agreement lead to true progress? And a remarkable discovery after decades of searching, scientists have finally found proof of gravitational waves. But what does that actually mean for science or the average layperson? We're going to continue that discussion in our program. Welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. We begin our show in Munich, where the annual security conference came to a close last night. Media coverage of the conference has focused on the much-hailed ceasefire accord that was reached a few days ago. Russia continues to express skepticism over the deal, while the United States urges the country to respect the agreement. But before we go to the debate with our panels, let's take a look at this and all the latest developments.
The Munich Security Conference came to a close last night. One of the major issues discussed at the meeting was a ceasefire in Syria and resumption of peace talks in the region. As one of the major powers involved in the region, Russia has warned of the catastrophic consequences if the conflict in Syria drags on.
We need to maintain a unitary state, and we must follow the dissolution on sectarian lines. The world cannot afford another Libya, Yemen, or Afghanistan. The consequences of such a scenario would be a catastrophe for the entire Middle East.
The United States Secretary of State, John Kerry, said in a speech at the conference that the Syria crisis should be settled politically. He urged parties to take advantage of the current opportunity to end the conflicts. He added that a lot of work must be done to ensure an effective cessation of hostilities within the week.
If the Assad regime does not live up to its responsibilities, and if the Iranians and the Russians do not hold Assad to the promises that they have made to the international community, then the international community obviously is not going to sit there like fools and watch this. There will be an increase of activity to put greater pressure on them.
Foreign ministers from the International Syria Support Group in the Munich Security Conference managed to seal an agreement to speed up deliveries of humanitarian aid to besieged communities in Syria. But the deep differences regarding the truce still exist. Their failure to agree on a ceasefire leaves the most critical step to resuming peace talks unresolved. Turkey on Sunday shelled Kurdish fighters in northern Syria and demanded they withdraw immediately from the area. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu said the Kurds were harassing Turkey. Ankara views the group as an extension of the PKK, which has waged a decades-old insurgency in southeast Turkey. This caused a strong reaction from Syria, saying the action by Ankara was intended to provide direct support to what it called defeated rebels. Turkey's involvement has complicated the Syria crisis, some say. While humanitarian access is key to relieving the suffering of millions of Syrians in the short term, a durable and lasting ceasefire will be required if stalled negotiations between Syrian President Bashar Assad's government and the opposition are to resume on or before the UN set target date of February the 25th.
For more on the latest situation regarding Syria and the relations among some of the most important powers on the issue, we're joined here in the Beijing studio, Mr. Ye Hailin, who is a researcher of the National Institute of International Strategy at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome to our program, sir. In Moscow, Russia, we are joined by Ms. Victoria Panova, who is a professor of international relations and foreign policy at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. Welcome, Ms. Panova. And also joining us from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., we're having Ambassador Kurt Volker, former U.S. ambassador to NATO, and also now the executive director of the McCain Institute of International Leadership. Welcome to the three of you. How much hope, Ambassador Volker, do we have in implementing the Munich agreement at the end of this week, which is supposed to be a ceasefire as a result?
Yeah, I am very, very skeptical that that's indeed what we're going to see. The Munich agreement was an agreement among states that were present in Munich, but not involving the actual fighters on the ground. And I think they're going to see things very, very differently. Even since the agreement was reached in Munich, we've seen that fighting in and around Aleppo has actually escalated rather than gone down, including Russian airstrikes and Syrian government forces moving to surround the city. That is something that forces on the opposition side are going to continue to resist. So as much as the people around the table in Munich wanted to see something, the reality on the ground is very, very different.
Ms. Panova, it seems Ambassador Volker was trying to say the most unpredictable factor regarding implementing the ceasefire might be Russia's airstrike and also the Syrian government army. Do you agree?
Well, I would agree only with one thing, is that I'm also skeptical about the fate of those agreements, and there is a huge lack of trust between the parties. But I would say, how can we talk about any truce or any progress on the way to there when countries like Turkey or Saudi Arabia are starting an assault and aggression against the Syrian territory, against the Kurds, which actually also supported by United States. So it's also a strike against American interests. So I would say that inability America is performing to, let's say, to frame in its allies in this region could, and the lack of trust, could be the main drivers or main obstacles towards the long-lasting peace in this area.
Okay, I have to have Ambassador Volker to respond to that.
Well, I think that she makes a very good point, that other actors are involved as well, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And what we've got in Syria is a situation where the government has been attacking the civilian population. The civilian population has taken up arms and is fighting against that. They're in many factions and many fragments, some of them supported by Turkey, some of them opposed by Turkey, some supported by Saudi Arabia. The U.S. has been conducting airstrikes against ISIS, which controls a good chunk of the territory as well, has been supporting some groups, but has been urging them not to attack the Assad government. And the U.S. position, I have to say, actually has been relatively weak. I wish we had been more assertive, more involved militarily at a much earlier stage. I think we could have had more influence at this point now had we done so.
All right.
As it is, I think it really is a very chaotic situation, and I don't expect the ceasefire to really come.
Well, we're going to talk about the roles of those countries just a little bit later, but now let's talk about the roles of Russia and the United States, since we have two of you with us, joining us from afar. So, Ms. Panova, the West has been accusing, especially the U.S., for example, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia has been accusing Russia of creating the facts on the ground in order to take advantage of the situation. Is that true?
Because the connection is not too good, so would you want to say that Russia is a primary
Let me repeat it again.
Someone to blame?
Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
It is suggested repeatedly by both the U.S. and those in the West that the Russian bombing in the area has been against the people of Syria and would eventually lead to failure of any progress. Do you agree?
Totally not, absolutely. First of all, Russia has been a firm supporter of their stable peace process and peace talks between all the concerned parties, because you cannot say if Americans or Turks or Saudis do not like Assad, it doesn't mean that the people of Syria do not like him as well. There are different factions, different parties. Some of them support him, some of them support other factions. As you know, the Shias recently, I think, are somewhat modifying their positions in Syria in order to kind of be more not pro-governmental, but to talk to the government of Assad. So I would say when outside actors are trying to put into Syria the civil war, the distrust between the people, instead of their a dialogue, which Russia is was promoting, that's where the trouble starts. And why Russia is bombing? First of all, we're not talking about ground troop operation, unlike other countries, but we're there in order to support the government and the people of Syria in order to secure them away from Islamic State that is threatening the true life and true well-being of the country.
Mr. Ye, you have been listening to the interactions between our two other panelists. What do you make of Russia's role? Former U.S. ambassador to Russia has been suggested it is creating quote-unquote facts on the ground, meaning trying to take advantage of the new status quo. From your perspective, what is happening?
Actually, everybody wants to create a new status quo.
What do you mean by everybody?
Saudi and Turkey also have their plan. They want to deploy the troops. They also want to make the new status quo, and then based on this, realize so-called ceasefire, and they
so
can
you are
occupy
saying
the
everybody
part of Syria.
is equally guilty?
So I don't know. I'm not saying everybody is equal. We should say that the point of the Syria situation currently, one is ceasefire, another one is eliminate the terrorists. But just what we, in our discussion in this studio, just like the things happened in Munich, the people is not talking about how to eliminate the terrorists. They are talking about how to handle the Bashar Assad. I don't think this Bashar Assad is the key issue and the only issue to solve the Syria crisis. They need to find a plan to really eliminate the ISIL. That's the key issue they should do, but nobody really care about it.
Ambassador Volker, you are not doing the right thing, according to Mr. Ye here. The Munich agreement is not necessarily going to be a practical plan. It's not the focus that it is talking about.
Right, I agree. I don't think the Munich plan is going to work. Let's back up a little bit. One, Russia is an outside actor. Russia has established and expanded a military base inside Syria and supporting the Syrian government with airstrikes while they provide ground forces, and Iran provides some ground forces, and Hezbollah provides some ground forces. Two, the Syrian government has attacked the civilian population and has created a division between the Shia and the Sunni in the country. Yes, there are people in the Shia area, Alawites, Christians perhaps too, who support the Syrian government, Syrian regime. And then there are people on the Sunni side of the divide, in the north and the west, who do not support the government at all and have been attacked by the government using barrel bombs, using chemical weapons. Those people are going to fight against the Assad regime no matter what. And three, the United States, I think, has had, unfortunately, a rather weak position in this. We've done airstrikes because our focus has been ISIS. We don't believe that it'll be stable with Assad in power, but our efforts to support opposition in Syria and to support them against ISIS have not been very effective. And we've not been very effective at building a coalition. I think it's a very disparate group, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Turkey, United States, others. And in that situation, I do have to say that the former ambassador to Moscow, Mike McFaul, he's right that the country most effectively shaping things on the ground is Russia working with the Syrian government.
Well, on the other hand, people are saying the U.S. is accusing Russia of all these quote-unquote wrongdoings only because the U.S. is not having an upper hand over Russia at this moment in terms of the issue of Syria. Once you guys are having an upper hand, you are not going to accuse anyone. And also some people say the whole mess has been created by the United States to begin with. Look at the war in Iraq, which has been having all of these chain effects all over the region.
Well, again, I'd back these things up a little bit and just look at them. Iraq was a separate conversation. It was reasonably stable by around 2008. The U.S. began to pull out. As the U.S. pulled out, sectarian violence flared up again. In Syria, however, it was quite different. In Syria, you had peaceful protests that were urging reform and change inside Syria. The Assad government went after those people violently, breaking up protests violently, arresting people, torturing people, and eventually bombing cities inside its own territory. All you have to do is look at the pictures of Homs or Aleppo, where the government has launched these massive strikes against the people. That's what kicked off the civil war inside Syria. The U.S., I think if there's a blame to be assigned to the United States, it's for not having acted to stop the violence earlier and now trying to recover from behind with a very weak position.
Mr. Ye here.
Actually, just I agree with the ambassador saying that the American stance is a little bit weak, but I have a little bit of suggestion to that make this stance stronger, that send very clear information to the Saudi and Turkey do not send their troops into the Syria. The Syria has too many violence and they are not very helpful. Actually, now is the time for the international community not only test the Syria situation, but also the neighboring countries' attitude. Now we see too much.
Let me have Ambassador Volker to respond to that. Can the U.S.
Sure.
do that, and will the U.S. have the capability to do that?
No, I think one of the interesting things that's happened over the last few years is the collapse of U.S. influence in dealing with Saudi Arabia because of the Iran nuclear deal and Iran's involvement in the region, whether it's in Iraq with the government in Baghdad, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and the U.S. seeming to be trying to cooperate with Iran in some ways. Saudi Arabia is feeling very isolated and is not going to be listening very much to the U.S. to say, don't fight against Iranian interests or Iranian forces in the region.
Okay, now we are having some very interesting situation. Regional powers, of course, international powers, geopolitics, all involved. And also, your Prime Minister said from Russia, Ms. Panova, that there might be a possibility of a second Cold War because the Western countries have been all accusing Russia over the issue of Syria without dialogue and real discussion. How much a danger is there of a second World War? Cold War, rather.
Well, before answering that, I would probably, there are certain reservations with regards to claim that there is a second Cold War now started, but I would say that certainly confrontation evolving, and we have to deal with that, and there is lack of trust between the countries. But let me jump back really fast towards what, to Russia, U.S. who's having upper hand in Syria and in the region. I would say, I wouldn't be so assured that Russia is having upper hand at this moment. It's like you don't want to overestimate yourself. But at the same time, I would say for United States, it's been a strategy for a long time, be it during the Cold War and especially after the unipolar moment has passed. As well, that there should be the United States don't have to win the war. It's enough to create insecurity around the borders of potential rivals. Take China and take all their situations that are in a large extent either inspired or supported by United States. Take Russia and take with their areas of Ukraine, Southeast Balkans, or now the Middle East. So I would say on the one hand, United States are benefiting from that, but taken they in a way lost the initiative. This could be damaging to their role because for them at the same time of putting their rivals down, it is important to still preserve this leadership role and the role of mediator or the one who can sort things out. But in this case, I would say Cold War is certainly, or let's say confrontation is evolving, but I would say it is not, it won't bring any good to the United States in this very case. So I would suggest, and I would say we have to talk and we have to start talking. It's not the Russia of the early 90s or late 80s, and we don't have China of their 80s, and those are serious countries, and I think America has to start taking us seriously.
Of course, Ambassador Volker, that is an analogy that the Prime Minister of Russia made, but do you think there is much danger of a much sharper opposition between Russia and the West, especially the United States, even on this issue of Syria?
So your question about a new Cold War and about the comments by Prime Minister Medvedev. I don't believe that over Syria there is such a risk. The Syria conflict has its own drivers, its own issues. Certainly different countries have different interests. I disagree with our Russian colleagues saying that the U.S. seeks instability, just the opposite. I think the U.S. is looking for a long-term, stable and secure solution, but also one that respects the interests of all the Syrian people, not just the Alawites. That being said, I think the issues of a new Cold War or confrontation between the U.S. and Russia or the West and Russia have more to do with Russia's actions in Europe. Here we've seen Russia invade two of its neighbors, annex territory, rebuild its military forces, violate countries' air and sea space, threaten nuclear strikes. And this is something where NATO and the U.S. have now begun to respond by reversing the decline in their military capacity in the area. That's something to watch. I think that's what President Medvedev was talking about. And I think here it is Russia's own actions that have brought this about. I hope that this does not lead to a greater confrontation, but at the same time, it is an obligation of the United States and NATO to defend their territory, should it ever be attacked.
Mr. Ye, danger of a Cold War?
In this part, I will agree with the ambassador in DC. Actually, I won't say this the crisis in Syria is because of the new Cold War. It's because of the field of the two world giant power, because they are failed to manage the situation, failed to solve the problem. But it's not good news for all of us, because even the Cold War is an order, international order. But if they fail this order in the chaos in any country, this means we are incapable to run the situation.
Can you, Mr. Ye, coming from China, give us 15 seconds to illustrate the role of China? After all, China is a world power now.
No, I don't think we are capable to solve the situation in Syria. This beyond the capacity, yes, in this part.
I see. Okay. Ye Hailin here in Beijing with us, Victoria Panova joining us from Russia, and Ambassador Kurt Volker from the United States. Thank you so much for the three of you for being with us. Really appreciate it. Stay with us here on World Insight. We got our final segment coming right up. A remarkable discovery. After decades of searching, scientists have finally found proof of gravitational waves. But what does that actually mean for science or the average layperson? Welcome back. You're watching World Insight on CCTV News, coming to you live from Beijing. A century ago, Albert Einstein hypothesized the existence of gravitational waves, ripples in space-time that dash across the universe at the speed of light. Last Thursday, scientists announced that they have finally observed the elusive waves directly. Experts say that this discovery could open the door to an entirely new way to explore the cosmos. Let's take a look.
A big bang in the field of astronomy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
At a press conference in Washington last Thursday, physicists from the LIGO Scientific Collaboration and Virgo Collaboration teams announced the discovery of gravitational waves.
So these gravitational waves were produced by two colliding black holes that came together, merged to form a single black hole about 1.3 billion years ago.
Gravitational waves were first proposed by Albert Einstein a century ago as a key prediction of his theory of general relativity. They are concentric ripples that squeeze and stretch the fabric of space-time. In certain circumstances, the movement of immense mass would cause gravitational waves, but most are so weak that they have no measurable effect.
So on September 14th, 2015, the two LIGO observatories in Hanford, Washington and Livingston, Louisiana recorded a signal nearly at the same time, nearly simultaneously, and the signal had a very specific characteristic. The characteristic of, as time went forward, the frequency went up.
This observation is the climax of a century of speculation, 50 years of trial and error, and 25 years perfecting a set of instruments. It signals the opening of a new window onto the universe.
Results confirm several very important predictions of Einstein's theory of general relativity. It confirms the existence of gravitational waves directly. Gravitational waves provide a completely new way of looking at the universe. The ability to detect them has the potential to revolutionize astronomy.
The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, is a large-scale physics experiment and observatory to detect gravitational waves. More than 1,000 scientists involved in the project come from 15 countries around the world. A research team from Tsinghua University is also a member in this project. The research and observation of gravitational waves is growing globally now. A new proposed collaborative project between LIGO and India is underway. China's scientists are also working on a project called Tianqing. The human dream of exploring the universe has always marched forward.
Yes, marching forward to analyze its significance and what does it mean for us, particularly for the near future. We're joined here in the Beijing studio, Mr. Zhang Fan, who is the Associate Professor at the Gravitational Wave and Cosmology Laboratory at Beijing Normal University. My first time to understand there's a laboratory like that in Beijing. Wonderful. Great to see you here. Meanwhile, joining us from Princeton, New Jersey, we are having Mr. Robert Digraph, who is the Leon Levy Professor and also Director at the Institute for Advanced Study. Welcome as well, Mr. Digraph. First of all, I want to ask...
It's wonderful to be there.
Great to have you, sir. Ask the two of you, who are the experts, what exactly is the significance of this latest development? Of course, we've been hearing numerous experts talking about the significance, but still, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. So let me have some very clear words from you first. Robert, you want to go first?
Oh, yes, sure. I think it's hard to underestimate how important this is. Einstein learned is that apart from light, there's another way to look at the universe, and that's through space itself. Space can curve, that's what we call gravity, but it can also vibrate and it can produce waves. And so this moment in the history of science, I think, can be compared to when Galileo first pointed his telescope and looked at the moon and the stars. We actually have a new way to look at the universe, basically by observing ripples in space itself. And this will be a tool for us to observe anything that doesn't emit light, whether it's black holes, whether it's the beginning of the universe itself. We basically have a totally new way to observe the universe, and I think that's extremely exciting. I think we all sometimes think, I just wish I was alive when the great revolutions of science took place in the 17th century or in the time of Einstein. We are living actually in a revolution right at this moment. We are learning how the universe works, how it was made, and where it's going, and that's terrific.
Well, Mr. Zhang, I'm sure you are just as excited as Robert, but Fan, tell me, what would that mean for the layperson? Yes, you would say, besides the electromagnetic waves we have used before to discover further about the universe, we now have a new tool. But how much would this new tool help us? Do we really know? Or are we overexcited already before we know anything further about it?
No, we cannot be overexcited about this. So as Robert mentioned already, so this is a completely new window on the universe. So astronomy is one of the first sciences we have as a human race. And from the beginning, we only have one channel to look at the universe, and that's electromagnetic waves. And now we have gravitational waves and also neutrinos coming up. So there's we're not just doubling, we're tripling the ways we look at the universe. And also, for layperson, you know, if you're a fan of science or even science fiction, this will interest you. It's wanting the basic fundamental science. And in terms of practical usage, I guess that's the question that you're really asking. You know, if you, I'll go crazy first. So if you watch Interstellar, the movie, right? So there's gravitational waves is used for interdimensional communications. And also there's a really famous Chinese science fiction called Three Body. And in there, gravitational waves is also used for communication. And also you
But
have
that's science fiction. Come on, you cannot use science fiction to prove that the possible development you are going to have in the future in real science. This is different.
In the future. But more immediately, stuff that's the spin-off technology of LIGO can be used immediately in our to improve our daily lives. For example, so LIGO is basically a measuring device for distance, a very accurate one, which means the whole thing has to be stabilized against movements of the ground. It can't be jiggling like that. So there is something called the vibration isolation system developed for LIGO, which is the most advanced thing in the world. And when can you use that thing? For example, if you're doing microchip manufacturing, when you're making those tiny little conducting lines in there, nanometer lines, you really don't want the workbench you're working on to jiggle like that. There's no way you can achieve any precision that way. So, for example, this sort
and that
of
is only one of those enormous amount of examples that how much of this further science contribution, science discovery could contribute to the daily life of the layperson. Having said that, though, Robert, would you like to explain to us how much potential and what is the speed of research we are having? I mean, it already takes 100 years after Mr. Einstein come up with this general relativity theory. So relativity theory. So how much would this technology or this new discovery really help us? In what speed?
Well, first let me remind you, when Einstein made his theory of relativity, he didn't dream that we would be using it every day when we use our GPS. Without Einstein relativity theory, we would mislocate our directions with a few kilometers every day. And so what we've seen, that technology has advanced to such a level of sensitivity that all the intricate details of nature and of how the universe works will start to matter for us. So I'm sure that in 100 years we'll have terrific applications of this technology. But I think more important is that we are getting a sense of what is the universe we are living in. And up to now we have basically been blind to many important developments. It was a great shock for all of us when the first measurement came in that it was this extremely violent collision of two black holes. These black holes apparently are out there. They are determining the universe. In fact, they're determining how we all came to being. And so I think apart from the terrific technological developments, the most important thing is we get a sense of where we are. What is the universe that we live in? And we also are realizing what we do not know. It's just, if you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
And we basically got another pair of eyes to watch the universe.
Right. But Robert, may I continue to ask you, because it really takes us a long time to find the electromagnetic waves to begin with. And then it also takes us 100 years to prove what Mr. Einstein said already about the general relativity theory. And this specific gravitational waves is a new discovery. However, how many other discoveries we still need to have before we understand really the universe? So what I'm trying to say here is, Robert, how much do we know about the universe to understand that gravitational waves is really contributing to our understanding of the logic, the real logic of the universe?
Well, it's important to emphasize this is the first of a long series of discoveries that will come fast. Gravity is the perfect way to study the universe because Einstein told us gravity measures anything that has mass and anything that has energy. So there's no way you can hide for gravitational waves. It's a completely comprehensive view of the universe. And we know that there are many elements in the universe we do not understand. Roughly, we understand only 4% of the content of the universe. 96% we call dark matter, dark energy. We have basically very little idea how the universe was born because we cannot see the very beginning of the Big Bang. Gravitational waves have the property to pass through everything, so they are the perfect way to measure all these phenomena. And the great thing is that there are many experiments going on. This first discovery was basically made before the experiment was turned on. It was still in the experimental run. It's like you go on a safari and already in the parking lot you see a wonderful animal. So I think we'll see very rapidly in the coming years many, many exciting discoveries that totally will transform our understanding of the universe. And in fact have the potential to ask and answer the really deep questions. In particular, I think the biggest question of all, How did it all started?
Right. But how many animals, beautiful animals, do we have to see in the parking lot in order to figure out?
Quite a few, actually. There are a lot of things we don't know about the universe. So first of all, well, this theory-wise, general relativity and quantum mechanics still doesn't work together. More practically, as Robert just mentioned earlier, 95% of the universe is something we don't know. For example, I want to follow up on the dark matter thing. So dark matter is something that's in the universe that doesn't interact strongly with other sources, other sort of forces apart from gravity, which means it doesn't emit light. It doesn't emit much light.
Right.
So it's very difficult to observe them using the traditional methods. But gravitational waves opens this completely new window where we can actually look at those things, see how they evolve, and really understand what they are. We don't know what they are, basically. Our standard model for particle physics don't have them. So that's so basically we now have something to look at them.
Right.
That's a jump. That's not just gradual change.
That is exciting, but we've seen some interesting development. For example, in the United States, that's where the announcement was being made.
Right.
We also have these kinds of LIGO systems inside India, inside rather Italy and also Japan at the moment. And in 2 years, some say India is also a possibility. And some also suggest in China, as you already got a lab in Beijing Normal University regarding gravitational waves. So what is the latest development here in China? What is the role of China contributing to the overall world research?
Okay, so China.
Big announcement, it seems like.
Right. This thing. I was tasked by my department to flash this in front of the camera.
Okay. All right. Enough promotion.
So that's so there's a lot of interest in China in gravitational waves. So I flashed that thing because last year we have organized a meeting that talks about the possible technology for next generation detectors that happened in China, and then the result is summarized in this particular journal. You can look it up online. It's free.
What exactly is the role? What exactly is the role?
What exactly is the role? So basic summary, we have very limited role. So we have, on the theory side, we have some people, tens of people, not hundreds of people, in Tsinghua, obviously, Beijing Normal University, and some other universities, Huazhong University, Zhongshan, and Chinese Academy of Sciences. But most of the people work on gravitational wave related topics, not 100% on gravitational waves. That's a theory side. On experiment side, we're very lacking. So basically, there's no current dedicated gravitational wave observatory currently operating or under construction in China. I don't think there's any preliminary study that's currently being properly funded. But nevertheless, people have been making proposals. They've been making preliminary studies. Tianqin, that's mentioned in the short piece earlier, is spearheaded by Zhongshan University and Huazhong University of Science and Technology. There are other things that the Chinese Academy of Sciences is doing.
I see. Let me ask you, is it possible to have international cooperation involving China? Is China willing to join? Are others willing to have China join?
So Tsinghua is already a member of LIGO, and my university myself is part of the Japanese detector called Kagura. So yes, on the scientist level, collaboration is greatly welcomed, and we feel very, very welcome as well. But of course, when things come up to political level, then hurdles may arise. But we haven't gone to that stage yet.
Okay. Robert, do you think we are facing the danger that maybe at the political level in the near future, as more discoveries are being progressed, there might be difficulties for countries to cooperate?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think actually this is a wonderful opportunity to collaborate. And I think actually there's a very good reason for this. We need more gravitational wave detectors, because only with many detectors can we actually pinpoint where the gravitational waves are coming from. And so the strength of this experiment is really to combine various instruments at various places in the world. And only then we can actually also combine gravitational waves with observations in visible light and radio waves to actually see what's going on.
Right.
So I think this is a terrific opportunity to really build a laboratory that's worldwide and where the various countries are collaborating And China has such an incredible knowledge in terms of the technologies that are needed for this. I think would be a perfect fit for China to join this international collaboration.
All right, before we go, I want to have one sentence from each of the two of you about what exactly do you think would be the most exciting thing that we discover gravitational waves for us to see about the universe? Fan? One sentence.
I'm an astrophysicist, so I want to see I want to study the space-time dynamics near the black holes. How do they evolve?
All right, Robert.
I think I want to understand why and how black holes have formed at all in the very beginning of our universe. And I think we'll get an answer pretty soon.
Oh, all right. I'm looking forward to that pretty soon. Wow, yeah, that sounds already very exciting. Robert Digraph and Zhang Fan, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. When we are finding it really soon, we are going to invite you guys back again into our studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of our program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine. You'll be able to find us, or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone at the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China